everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. So I have a little bit of a conundrum that I want to present to you guys. I saw one of my cousins this past weekend and she was telling me that one of her New Year's resolutions is to read 12 books this year, one book a month, but she isn't going to be picking the books herself. Now, a little bit of background, she is someone who loves reading, she loves books. She grew up loving and reading books, and then when she got to college, she sort of stopped reading for fun because she had so much schoolwork she had to deal with, and all of that reading kind of just took over her life. And then after college, she never really picked up books in quite the same way again. I've even given her a couple of books every now and then, and you know, she reads them. It's not like this is someone who is completely new to reading books or anything like that. So she's putting a little bit of a twist on her New Year's resolution. She's not going to be picking the books herself. She's contacting 12 different people from various aspects of her life to recommend one book to her. She wants to do it this way because she feels like she doesn't really even know what she likes anymore, and so she's contacting all these different people because she feels like they'll give completely different recommendations, and then she'll be able to figure out once again where her tastes lie and things like that. Now, as you may be able to surmise, I am one of those people who she contacted or she's asking to recommend her a book. The problem comes into the fact that we're only allowed to recommend one book, so I can't give her like 3 books and have her pick one of those. And the other thing is that I'm not allowed to really ask her any questions. So people obviously come to me all the time asking me for book recommendations, and I am always more than happy to provide any help that I possibly can. What I do though is I try to get a sense of what they want to read. If I don't already have an idea, I'll ask them what they're in the mood to read, or I'll ask them what other books that they've enjoyed, or genres that they want to read, or you know, anything to sort of narrow down the list a little bit. And then I'll usually have around 3 to 5 books that I'll recommend to that person, and then they'll go and look up the books and figure out which one they think sounds the most interesting to them. Or sometimes I'll just give them all 3 books and then they'll read all 3 and then come back and let me know what they thought. So I'm sort of able to narrow down the scope of what book I'm going to recommend. But in this situation, while I do have a little bit of an idea of what my cousin likes, she's basically open to anything because she wants to break out of what she might normally pick for herself. So basically she's asking me to pick a single book out of all of the books that I have read and loved to recommend to her. And this is probably the hardest question that I've ever been asked before in terms of book reading. There are so many different aspects and angles that I can come at this with that I'm not completely sure what to do. I'm gonna give you guys just a couple of the books that I'm thinking of recommending her. You guys can let me know what you guys think, and I would love to hear what you guys would do in my situation, what book you would recommend, because it might actually give me an idea of a book I would recommend to her. So I did a little bit of narrowing down in my head already. I decided to not recommend anything that is YA or middle school or children's or anything like that, because she is older than me and I don't know how receptive she'll be to YA because I don't think she's read anything YA before. Of course, that also brings up the point that I could recommend to her possibly like the best YA ever or something like that, but I don't even know what that would be, and I feel like any YA book I would recommend to her would kind of set her standard of what YA is, and that's just way too much pressure to put on one book. I decided I'm not going to recommend anything sort of in the fantasy realm because I personally don't read a lot of fantasy, and I feel like the only thing I would be able to recommend is like Game of Thrones, which feels a little bit too mainstream to me, which sounds really hipster, but what I mean is that when it comes to series like Game of Thrones or Hunger Games or Harry Potter, any of those that have gained popularity, especially because they've been turned into movies or TV shows, I feel like she would have picked up those books already on her own if she was interested in them. The first one that immediately came to mind when she brought up this situation to me is Richard Yates, and I was thinking of recommending either Revolutionary Road or The Easter Parade. I feel like The Easter Parade might be better just in her specific situation, but I feel like Revolutionary Road is a stronger novel overall, which is probably why it's a more popular novel, but at the same time I also kind of want to recommend The Easter Parade because it is slightly less popular than Revolutionary Road. And then the next book that I thought of is The Road by Cormac McCarthy, because this is possibly the most devastating but beautiful and amazing book that I have read in a while. This is definitely a book that I recommend to a lot of people, but I also don't know how depressed she wants to get. because you will be super depressed after reading this book, but it's so good. So I feel like I should recommend this just because I feel like everyone should read this book and I recommend it to everybody. I was also thinking about A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith because again, I love this book and it has a lot of heart to it. But I don't know necessarily if this is what she wants to read. This is going to be the theme of all of these choices that I'm going to show you. I'm going to explain to you why I think it's a good choice, but then I'm also going to say at the end, I don't know if that's what she wants. Next is Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk Home by Ben Fountain, which I read at the beginning of 2013 and is just absolutely amazing. I put it on my top of 2013 list. The reason why I'm slightly hesitant about this book is because it is slightly stream of consciousness, and it's one of those books that I think is best read in one straight go. So I feel like if you have the time to read this all in one sitting, that's the best way to do it, but I don't know if she necessarily has the time to do things like that. The next is The Art of Fielding by Chad Harbach. I talk about this book all the time on this channel. I'm sure you guys are sick of me talking about it, but again, I mean, I just really like this book. It's very character driven though. I don't think that's going to be a problem with her, but I don't know, something about it just holds me back. This is definitely higher on the list of books that I would recommend to her. I did pick up one nonfiction book out of my pile of books, and that's The Emperor of Maladies by Siddhartha. I don't even know how to say his last name. This is one of those books where if someone doesn't read a lot of nonfiction, this is definitely a really great nonfiction to pick up. Then there's Burial Rites by Hannah Kent, and I want to recommend this book because I know that she likes really beautiful writing, and this book has really beautiful writing, and also the fact that this is based on a true story I think would appeal to her. Then on a completely different end, there is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I think this is just a really fun book, and I feel like she might need a really fun book. This isn't something that's super deep or super heavy, but it's very plot driven and very fun, and I think there's a lot of things about the Singaporean culture in here that's very relatable to anyone who's of any Asian descent. And then the final book is one that I was immediately drawn to because it was the best book that I read in 2012 and is definitely in my like top 10 probably of all time best books ever. But I feel like this is coming from completely left field for her. I don't think she's read anything like this before, and I'm not sure how she's going to react to it, and that's The Devil All the Time by Donald Ray Pollock. The reason why I'm hesitant to recommend this book, although this is probably the book I most want to recommend to her, is because it's very, very violent and twisted and dark, and I don't know if she likes things that are violent and twisted and dark. I want to ask her like if she's watched like Chuck Palahniuk movies, or if she's watched any like Guy Ritchie movies, or you know, Quentin Tarantino, or any of those things, so that way I can kind of gauge how her tolerance to that stuff is, because if you don't like violence, or if you're not comfortable with it, then you're not going to react well to this book no matter how well it's written. But if you can tolerate those things, then this is a really amazing book to read because it's just so well done. Like, I never have read a book that captured my attention in this way. Donald Ray Pollock is just such a great writer, but I just don't want to recommend this book to her because I feel like if she doesn't have a tolerance for those things, it's not going to appeal to her at all. So obviously I have some sort of an idea on the book I'm going to recommend to her, but I just need to figure out in my mind what direction I want to take her in. Do I want to give her something that I know she's going to like, or do I want to give her something that's completely the opposite of what I think she's going to like and see if she likes it? And then part of me also kind of wishes I could know what books the other people are recommending, because then it would kind of give me a sense of, okay, she has this area covered, which is obviously not the point of this exercise. It's literally just me providing her with what I think she should read. Like, what is the one book I think she should read in the entire world, which, oh, this is just so hard for me to figure out. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you have a comment about any of the books that I showed you, feel free to leave that down below and let me know if you think that is a good or bad recommendation. Either way, I'm willing to know if you think it's a bad recommendation. It won't hurt my feelings, I promise. Also, the question that I have for you guys that I mentioned earlier is, if this situation was presented to you, what book would you pick? You can also list a couple of books, because I know how difficult this is. I don't know how anybody that she knows is narrowing it down to one book. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching.